And hello everyone, welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial we'll be taking a look at Nimble. So Nimble is Nim's package manager, similar to how you have npm with JavaScript, Cargo with Rust, or PDM with Python. Nimble allows you to create your project and then manage all of its dependencies and all of its run tasks. So let's start by initiating a project. So you can go Nimble init. Now if you do this, it will initiate a project in this directory. In our case it is not fine because our directory name is nim. Now the big issue with nim is if you create a project called nim and nim depends on a package called nim, then you have a circular dependency which it wouldn't know how to manage. So in our case I'm going to give it a name, but if your folder name is not called nim, this is fine. I'm going to call it project, and it's going to initiate a project called project. They will ask us, do we want to create a library, a binary, or a hybrid? And I forgot to mention, you don't need to install Nimble, it comes packaged with nim. Anyways, a library pretty much just provides functionality to other packages. So if you just want to be a support, you go library. Binary is a executable, so that is a standalone package. And in a hybrid is a mix of a library and a binary. For simplicity's sake, we're going to go binary because we don't want all of the other jazz. Then here, ask you for the initial version, just say okay. What is the package description? This could be Nimble example. It asks you, what license do you want for your code here? Your license may not be here that you want, so you could go other. Or if you don't want to give it a license, you can go proprietary. I'm going to go MIT because that is one of the simplest and easiest licenses there is. Pretty much says anyone can use the code. Just please don't blame me if something goes wrong. That's MIT for you. Then they ask you what version of nim do you want to support. So in our case, the lowest version of nim is probably the version of nim we have installed. I'm just going to say I'm okay with that, but you might want to change this depending on what your goal is. And here we go. That created a new folder called project. And in here we have a project.nimble file, a source folder, and a project.nim. Now our project.nimble file is pretty much just our package.json if you're coming from JavaScript. It contains our package version. It contains our author, so who made this. It contains a description, the license it uses. However, if you put your license in here, I recommend creating a new license file and actually putting your license in here, just so everybody knows where to find your actual license. You have a source directory, and it's just this folder right here. That's where all of your source code goes. And then a binary, that is the name of the binary that this project will run. And in here it says it requires nim of version 2.2.4 at least. So first of all, you want to check that everything in your project is configured correctly. You can do that by going nimble check. This will just go and say, oh wait, let me just go into project. My bad, because you can only run nimble check in a place that actually has a nimble file. In this case, this one doesn't have any nimble file, so I had to go into project itself. So you go nimble check, and there we go. So it says everything is valid, that's good. To know if it works, you could just go boink like that. Now it will be, hey, something's wrong, that is not allowed. So we just simply remove that and nimble check will work as expected again. Now nimble also gives you an easy way to build your project. So just nimble build, as you just build your project, and there's an executable. You just go project like that, and Bob's your uncle, hello world, which is sit in here. You can also go nimble run. This should build and run your project, but I think this version of Nimble has a bug where it simply doesn't do that. But in theory, nimble run should both compile and then run your project, similar to how we did it with nim-c-r main.nim. That's pretty much the longer hand of it. You can also compile your source code using different engines. For example, by default, it's going to do it using the C backend. But if you want to compile it using C++, you can go nimble cpp, and then you need to specify the file specifically. You cannot compile everything at once, so you need to go source and then project.nim. And that will give us an executable here, which has been compiled using the C++ backend. Same with JavaScript, you could just go JS, and that will give us a JavaScript file, which is the compiled version of this file right here. You can confirm both of them work by going into your source file and then just running project, that works fine, or going node, if you have Node.js installed, project.js, and there we go. Both of them seem to work fine. So if you want to compile using different backends, you can. Now, I'm going to pretty much skip over this part of the tutorial because Nimble is a little bit buggy, it seems. But pretty much you can also create tasks. This is maybe, let's say you want to run tests. These tasks will allow you to run it. Almost like if you come from JavaScript, you could go npm run dev to run a specific development command. In this case, we'd have Nimble and then hello. So it's task, the task name, the description of the task, and then what it does. This is kind of like a little bit of nim script, which is a scripting language that uses nim. Now if we just run that, and not Noble of course, Nimble, then generally it should actually be executing this, but I think there's an issue with compiling and running in Nimble at the moment at the same time, so it should be printing out hello world. Similarly, you have before and after, so you could create a task and say before that task this should run, and after that task this should run. So this could maybe clean up. So let's say you did a bunch of compiling and testing, then this could clean it up and just maybe remove all of those extra files it generated, and this one could maybe prepare so this task could run. Again, it should actually work, but because of Nimble, it's just saying working, it's not actually doing anything else. So this was before, this right there. Then there's working here, that is this actual task running, and then this last working would have been the after hello. But on a day that Nimble is not as busted as it is today, then that should work. Alright, so we have just gone through pretty much most of the basics of Nimble. Let's get to the actual fun part of Nimble. In this tutorial, we'll actually be taking a look at how we can set up a user interface in Nim, because that's one of the most fun parts of learning how to use a package manager. Because in Nim, not easily doable, but if you install a package to do it for you, it is. In our case, we'll be using nim-x. Nim-x is what you use to create a user interface in Nim. Take note, however, that this may not work in a future version of this tutorial. So if you're maybe, let's say 5 years from now watching this tutorial and you're having issues, simply use a different package. The tutorial will pretty much stay the same, the concepts at least, whilst the package itself may not work. This is unfortunately the volatile nature of Nim, where a lot of things unfortunately get deprecated because of the development cycle. So there are two ways to search for your packages. The first one is going Nimble search nim-x. This will search through your packages. So here you'll see we have nim-x. There's a URL to its GitHub. There's its tag, so it's a GUI, UI, and library. Its description is a cross-platform GUI framework. It has an MIT license, and then of course its website. Then here you have WI nim-x or WinMX, whatever, and that is a minified code generator, I guess. And here we have nim-x too. So we'll just be going with nim-x here. Take note, however, you could also use your browser and go to nimble.directory and just search for the package. In this case, there's nim-x. Seems to be trending now that I clicked on it once for the tutorial. But here we have nim-x. You also have Carax, which is kind of cool. It's a framework for developing single-page applications in Nim, almost like React in JavaScript. But nim-x, that's what we want. Then here's the code to install it. But I'd recommend against this because Nimble does not automatically add the dependency to your project. So this will install it to your system, but not add it as a dependency to your project, causing a lot of confusion later on during development. So what I would rather recommend is you go to the project website, which is the GitHub, go into the nim-x.nimble or whatever the project's name is and just .nimble, and then take a look at that version. Then we go back here to where our code base is and we say requires nim-x, and then we specify version 0.3 or 0.2 or 0.1. So this will just specify what version we should be downloading and what is allowed to be used. when you build your project, Nimble will automatically install any missing dependencies. So you'll notice if we go Nimble build right now, it will start downloading that dependency. This may take a while on your end. On my end it is cached, so it should be relatively fast, but on your end this may take a while. In this case you can see I had Nimx 0.2 installed, so it's just ignoring that because now we want 0.3. And there we go, it built the project. If we go project, nothing's going to change, but now we have this dependency installed. So you could use Nimble install Nimx, or even Nimx at 0.3 for a specific version, or at head to get the latest version from GitHub. And that should be at #head, not just at head. But I don't recommend doing this unless you have specific reasons for it, mainly because Nimble does not support simply adding the dependency to your project yet. So I rather recommend you just simply add it right there. Now that we have this dependency installed, we can actually use it in our code base. Note all our code will be going into this source directory. And first we want to import a couple of Nimx dependencies. So import Nimx/window and import Nimx/text field. Let's create a procedure called start application. And while we're at it, let's also import Nimx/layout. Now because it's so many, you could actually simply put them all like this. There we go. Then here we can go and create a new window. So var wnd is equal to a new window. And take note that if you're watching this in the future, the code may be a little bit different, because even from me just writing the tutorial or scripting the tutorial to right now, a lot of things change, so there's a little bit of script as well. Then here we have new rectangle, where we have a 40 for the X position of the window, 40 for the Y position, 800 for the height, and let's go 600, this is the width and this is height, so 800 for the width, 600 for the height. Then we have wnd.makeLayout. This will create a layout for us. And we can specify we want a label. And we can specify frame. And then text hello world. Now in here we can just simply run Nimble build. If you get red squiggly lines once you save, just go take a look at the documentation. The documentation itself is on their GitHub. Alright, so it has built successfully. Now you can run that project, and here we go. Now this window may be a little bit wonky on my system because I use a window manager, but there we go. If you want to change the width and the height, you could. So we could go maybe 1280 by 720 and maybe 500 by 100. Now if we were to build and run that, and usually we use nim run or nimble run, but in this case it's a little bit busted, so we're just going to skip that. And here we go. You'll also notice that its default position has changed, as well as its width and its height. So that's a basic way to actually install the package and then use it here in your project. And yeah, that's the basics of using Nimble in Nim. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all again in the next Nim tutorial.